right. Good evening, one and all. Welcome to everyone who's tuning in tonight for this powerful reasoning that has been scheduled now for quite some time. But right now is the time, right? So, welcome to everyone that's tuning in on whichever platform you are on, whether it be Facebook or any of the unstoppable medias that you're tuning in right now. Welcome. All right. So, the very first thing that I want to ask you to do is to just simply share out the program. That's the one first thing. And then I want you to click that thumbs up button because that is very much important for these platforms to share out the stream and get more viewers to listen in. And especially, if you're a Jamaican right now listening, right, you need other Jamaicans to hear what's going to happen this evening in this conversation because I have a very special guest, as you can see from the thumbnail, right? It's the leader of the opposition, right? Minister Mark Golding is here with us this evening to talk about the issues Jamaica is faced with, right? Among other things, right? So if you haven't shared the program as yet, please share it out right now so that we can get more viewers on to take a listen to what's going on, right? This is going to be a very short and in-depth interview with the minister, right? So I'm not going to delay any longer. I'm going to add him to the stream so that he can introduce himself with us. Minister Golding, thank you, sir, for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Unstoppable, and big
Yes.
up all the Unstoppable TV viewers. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I look forward to the discussion that we will have this evening.
I feel like it's going to be a very informative and powerful one, Minister Golding.
Yes, well, I believe so too. I believe so too.
All right. Now, let's jump right into it because, like you heard me state just now, it's going to be very short. We're going to have this conversation for an hour, and hopefully it doesn't go over, right? But we're going to keep it very short. So I'm going to first start off by saying, you have persons who know of you, Mark Golding, as the new leader of the People's National Party, right? They know that you are the new president, but they don't know the man, Mark Golding, right? So what I want you to do for me right now, before we get into the deep and serious questions, let's just start off lightly, right? So that we can learn a little bit about you. Give us a little background on who Mark Golding is.
All right. Well, Mark Golding, born in Jamaica, 1965 in July. I grew up on the university campus. My father was a professor of orthopedic surgery at the University of the West Indies. My mother was a civil servant. In her early career, she worked at what was then called the Central Planning Unit, became the Planning Institute of Jamaica. And then later on, she joined my father at the rehabilitation center, the Mona Rehab, which my father started. And he died in 1996, and it's now called the Sir John Golding Rehab Center, named after him. So on campus, it was outdoor lifestyle, football and cricket, bicycle riding, and some exploring around the Mona Dam and the hills to the back of the campus there. And then, of course, Hermitage and Augustown are our neighboring communities. So we had friends from those communities as well, played ball together, and so on. As a teenager, got more into the music scene, started to go dance. I was very into, Jamaican popular music, loved the dancehall vibes of the time, Brigadier Jerry, Jalove, right through Metro Media, Kilimanjaro, and all them sound, Peter Metro, right through. So I studied law. I'm a lawyer by profession, and I specialized in commercial and corporate law and built my legal career as an expert in the field of corporate finance, really, and capital markets, really, financing transactions for sovereign governments and for the private sector. Right. And I started a company back in 1992, I believe it was, with two friends, Chris Daring and Peter Bunting. It was called Daring, Bunting and Golding, DB&G. And so my career as always, before politics, was really partly business and partly law and where they intersect. Mm-hmm. And eventually that was sold to Scotiabank. And having done that, I decided I wanted to serve my country more. And I was invited to come into the Senate by Portia Simpson Miller, the most honorable Portia Simpson Miller, in 2007. That was my first foray into public life. And I, became a shadow minister of industry and commerce, and later of shadow minister of justice. I became treasurer of the PNP at one point. And when we won the general elections at the end of 2011, I became minister of justice. So I served 4 years there, trying to get the justice system more efficient, bringing reforms that would tackle the backlog of cases and give greater access to justice. Developed the child diversion program and the restorative justice programs, which are really seeking to tackle disputes between people outside the court system and try and achieve healing or better outcomes. We decriminalized personal use of ganja. That was a big reform that I spearheaded. So you can't get charged for a spliff or draw a weed. Can't get a criminal record. If you had a past criminal record for possession of small quantities of ganja, that would be automatically expunged. And we also created a new industry with a regulated industry for medical and therapeutic cannabis, and established a regulatory body to oversee that. I haven't been so happy with the way that's rolled out since we demitted office in 2016. I don't think the current government has really done well with that. That's a whole nother question.
Mm-hmm.
But those were some of the things I focused on. Since then, I got encouraged to go into representational politics, unstoppable.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the constituency executive of South St. Andrew for quite a few years. I was asked to join, but that was just a monthly meeting. But in 2016, Omar Davies, who was the MP, announced that he would be retiring. First thing he did was step down as chairman. And I was persuaded to put myself forward as chairman of the constituency executive. And that was a competitive race, which I won. And then a year later, he resigned as MP, retired as MP, really. And there was a by-election. Both Portia Simpson Miller and Dr. Davies retired on the same day. There were two by-elections that day for those two seats. And that is when I became member of parliament. I was then made shadow minister of finance by Dr. Peter Phillips, who was party leader. And then after the 2020 elections, which we lost, he decided to retire himself from the position of president of the party. That created a vacancy. I was persuaded to put myself forward and was successful. So I was elected within the party as a new party leader in November 2020. So I've been there nearly a year and a half now.
We're going to get to that part because I have a specific question pertaining to that. Now, all right, you said you were a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
Before politics.
Still I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer.
Right.
But I don't really practice anymore, but
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you always aspire to become a politician? Is that something you wanted to do?
No, I must tell you, I was always interested in politics. From as a youth coming up, I used to read. As a teenager, I was very interested in political ideas, political theory. I read some of the books by Michael Manley in that time. The Politics of Change in particular was one. The Struggle in the Periphery, which was his explanation of the 70s, was another. But when I started to study law at university, I kind of became had less time to think about politics and so on. I was, the law is quite intense. So I'm building out a career in law and business. I was very focused on that at the time. But, because of the being blessed really and the success that we were blessed with in business, I achieved some financial security through that process. And I decided, I came out of a family of service because my father was a person who was a builder of institutions for people who needed assistance, like the Mona Rehab Center, which is now the Sir John Golding Rehab Center. It's the only center of its kind in the English-speaking Caribbean for persons with physical disabilities. And I'm chairman of the charity that supports that now. He started the Hope Valley School, which I believe is celebrating its 50th anniversary very shortly, and various other things that he did. So my house was always one of where you had a sense of obligation as somebody who had been blessed with certain things growing up. So I felt the need to give back. I thought I had acquired significant experience in business and in finance and and skills in the law, which I thought I could roll out for the benefit of the wider nation, not just myself and my law firm. And so, I became a legislator through the Senate. I've always been an active legislator. When I was Minister of Justice, I was put in charge of the government's legislative program. And you may recall that we were in an IMF agreement at that time, and a whole slew of reforms were agreed to try and turn Jamaica's public finances around and put them on a sustainable footing. And I had to ensure that we delivered all of the legislation for that on a timely basis. So we passed every test. And it has borne fruit. I mean, Jamaica, which was a very highly indebted country back then, in 2012, 2013, it is now still heavily indebted, but much, much better than it was. The public debt has been reduced by about a third in that period. And so, the great achievements really through that reform process. So, yeah, I never really thought of myself as becoming a lawyer, as a politician until quite late I'd say in my 40s. I got kind of drawn into it. I was interested in it. Opportunities presented themselves. I was persuaded to take up those opportunities. And then one thing kind of led to another. And here I am now as leader of the opposition and president of the PNP. I really never, 10 years ago, I never saw this coming, I must tell you.
All right. No, you touched on it briefly just now, that you became the president after the former president resigned, right? No, my question to you, right? Was that something you was ready and prepared for when you got that position? Were you ready and prepared for that?
That's a really good question. Put it this way. September 3rd, 2020 was a general election. I won my seat. The seat I'm in, South St. Andrew, is traditionally a strong PNP seat. And I think I got the most votes of any constituency for the PNP in that election. But unfortunately, many of my colleagues who are probably senior to me in terms of their experience and standing in the party did not win their seats. And when Dr. Phillips decided to retire from being the party leader and a vacancy was created, when we surveyed the field, people were telling me, look, you have to put yourself forward. The movement needs you at a time like this. And so, I reflected on it for about 3 weeks, talked to various people, and eventually decided to give it a go. And it's been a learning curve for me, Unstoppable, to be really honest, because, the nuances and tactics of running a political party are quite different to anything that I had done before. I will admit that. And I would also admit that some mistakes have been made along the way, but overall, I think that I am growing in the position. I think I've learned a lot. And I think what I need to now achieve is for the public to know Mark Golding, know who I am, what I stand for, what I have to offer. And I believe that when I do that, people will give me the chance, because I think I do have a lot to offer in terms of somebody of integrity, somebody who is here to serve the people, not to achieve any further personal wealth or anything of that nature, somebody who has the analytical and intellectual skills to make good decisions, and somebody who has the love of the people and care for the people very much in the forefront of my mind. I'm not in this now to do anything other than to help to uplift the Jamaican people, especially those who need that kind of assistance. That is the mission of the People's National Party traditionally, and I'm fully on board with that. That's the only reason I'm doing this. If I can't do that, if I can't deliver that, it don't make no sense. If I'm just going to maintain the status quo or try and enrich myself or whatever, that I am totally have no desire or passion for that. That is something that I would much rather live a quiet life and get on with other things. If that was, I'm really about trying to see what we can do to make Jamaica a better place for all of us, a more equal and fair society, and where the Jamaican dream can be pursued by good policies that are focused on uplifting the people. That's really what I'm about. We have some really deep problems in the country. We have some good things going for us too, of course. We're a great nation. and we're internationally respected for our culture and our sporting prowess and other things. But we also have some serious issues at home, which we need to we need to tackle the fundamental causes of those things if we are going to achieve our goals and create the Jamaican dream of which I spoke in the budget
Right.
presentation. So that is what I'm committed to doing
Mm-hmm.
at this time, and I look forward to trying to make that case to the people, and hopefully they will be receptive of that and give us a chance to show what we can do.
You know, this is one of the cries I personally have heard from multiple people, from time to time, that it's either PMP or JLP, and it goes back and forth with each election, right? And they're like, okay, I'm tired of this now, right? But since you became the president of the PMP, what changes have you made within the party itself?
Mm. Well, I've been trying to make the party more relevant and appealing. So we have been giving younger people a bigger opportunity to have their voices heard. We've established a junior shadow cabinet of persons in their 20s and 30s, each one allocated a portfolio responsibility with some autonomy where they can go out and do their own analysis and make their own presentations and public statements around that to kind of elevate the image of the party as welcoming of young people. That is one thing. I've established a trust fund for our party workers who have fallen on hard times to help them with issues like education and housing and their own economic enablement. This is something which through my experience within the party, I've seen the need for it. And I think we as a caring organization need to show that by how we treat with our own. So, I established what it's called O.T. Fairclough Trust Fund. O.T. Fairclough was the man who actually created the PNP in the sense that he was the one who went out and brought Norman Washington Manley into the party as our first president. And I wanted to honor O.T. Fairclough because I don't feel he has really received the props that he deserves. So the trust fund is named after him. We endowed it with $15 million to begin with. We appointed a trust board with distinguished and reputable people on it, and a grants board within the different structures of the party that will make recommendations for who should get a benefit. And of course, part of the role now is to build that fund so it can do more and more for our workers. So these are two things where now putting more emphasis on political education. It's taken me a little while to get that sorted out, but that is now being led by Patricia Duncan Sutherland, who is also president of our women's movement. She's very passionate about political education. And we want to make that not just about the history of the party and its ideas, but also about modern techniques of political organization and also life skills, financial literacy, health awareness, and so on, to make being a member of the party a very relevant and an empowering experience for our supporters and our members. So these are some of the things I've been doing, where we have the a shadow cabinet. I'm reviewing that at the moment to see, whether we can make or need to make any adjustments to improve the overall performance and how we're perceived by the public. And we've also been developing a message and a kind of restatement of our philosophical beliefs in this current dispensation. We formed in 1938. We've gone through a lot of different stages in our life as an organization, and the world has changed a lot over that period as well. So we always have to be refreshing our view and the way we articulate our basic core philosophy. And Professor Anthony Bogues of Brown University in the US, he is leading a commission that is going through the process of engaging and consulting with the grassroots of the party and the different organizations and structures within the party to get a reformulation of our purpose and our mission. And that will be rolled out soon. And our policy framework is going to dovetail into that and be consistent with that vision. So these are some of the things I've been focusing on. Unstoppable. I think these are important initiatives. And, I've been there for a year and a bit now, and we've seen some progress. The unity within the party was an issue because, we've had a number of leadership contests internally over the last few years, several of them. And each one of them has created some amount of ripples in the water, so to speak. So I've been trying to be as accommodating and welcoming of everybody. The idea of the party being a big tent where anyone who wants to see the party move forward is welcome. That's something I believe in. That's something I'm trying to practice. And it's a work in progress, but I have seen improvements, and I continue to encourage all of my colleagues to come on board and to show themselves as being on board, because some of them are on board, but unless the public sees them actively doing that, then the public may have doubts. So this is why it's important that we present ourselves as a strong team, and that's something that we're working on as well.
All right. So this one right here, I want you to take some time, and address this one for me, right? Because though mainstream media is very much still relevant and important, right? Social media is the go-to right now for information.
Yeah.
Right. And when I say information, I'm talking about especially the young people. The young people go to social media to get any form of information. So when it comes to politics, young people, they are not too keen on saying, what, I want to vote. And there are a lot of young people today that never voted, right? And they don't see a reason to vote. Them say, "Chow, me see my mother and my grandmother and all of them vote over the years and it didn't benefit them, so what me I go vote for?" I want you to use this forum right now and let me hear what you would say to those young youths who decide, say, "Yeah, me voting enough for me because it now go change nothing."
Yeah. I would urge them to reflect on that very carefully. So politics is not supposed to be about an individual getting a particular benefit for themselves. That may happen depending on their needs and their circumstances. But really, it's about the national good and how we build a better country and the system in which we all survive and hopefully thrive. And the leadership of the country is very important because it determines the rules and the framework that everybody has to live within. And there's so many aspects of life where the decisions that are made by the leadership of the country can impact you. So, for example, you could be a youth and, a young man on a corner and you're bill a spliff and hold a meds. And police draw down on you and carry you to station and charge you for it. And next thing you know, you have a criminal record. You can't get a government job. You can't get a US visa. Now, when we pass a law that says, no, that can't happen, that is not an arrestable offense, you cannot be charged for it, that creates a whole new dispensation right there. When a small farmer is growing ganja, but police and soldier can raid him and trap down in field and put him out of business, lock him up, etc. But there's an opportunity for him, or there should be, to go into a regulated industry, growing for medicinal purposes, which can help build the economy and help people who need that kind of product to get better. That's a new opportunity for young people there as well. And that's just two examples of why it does matter who you have in charge and what the persons who are running the country, what they really stand for. Are they just slick talkers? Are they just surrounded by effective PR? Or when you penetrate what they do and how consistent they are in their positions on issues, are they real and authentic people who you can trust to pursue the right thing for the country and make it better? These are important things. So I would just encourage every young person, just look beyond your immediate horizon. Think you're hopefully going to be on this earth for a good long time. And what happens nationally will impact you. It will determine the quality of the schools in your community. It will determine the quality of the roads and the services, the street lighting, the garbage disposal, all of those things. These are important issues that affect day-to-day life. Now, the truth of the matter is they can't all be fixed at once, but the orientation of a political party will determine whether those things are given priority or those things are allowed to just fester the way they are. So I would encourage the youth them to think, elevate their mind, be conscious, be aware of what is going on, be interested in the world and the world around you. And when you get the chance to vote, use it. It is a right that was not easily obtained. Many, many people had to die for you to have that right. Blood, sweat, and tears were shed for that right. Nani, Sam Sharp, Taki, Marcus Garvey, and many others had to struggle. And those are the prominent names we know of. Those are our heroes and heroines. But there were many, many others who were with them who fought on the battlefield to give you the rights you now enjoy. Don't take them for granted. Don't disrespect those people by saying you can't bother, because nothing can come out of it. Think in a more long-term, a more conscious way, and cast your franchise, which is the vote, when the time comes. That's what I would say.
All right. Now, since I started this platform, Minister Golding, I've had, and we're still on the topic of young people right now, because they are the ones that's going to make a difference in Jamaica in the future to come, right? So I want to talk about that a little bit longer.
See.
Since I started this platform, I've had several persons reach out to me seeking assistance, and I'm talking about young youths just leaving high school with subjects but unable to find a job, and they reach out and they say, Unstoppable, please put this out there for me to find out if anybody is hiring. And just recently I had a young man reach out to me and he said, listen, Unstoppable, I'm having negative thoughts right now, and I don't want to act on these thoughts. I'm contemplating going out there and doing the wrong thing, right? And all I need is a job. I've sent out resumes. I've filled all kind of applications, but I cannot get employment, right? What plan do you have for the young youths as far as that is concerned?
Yeah. Well, first of all, as a caring person, one tries to assist individuals when one can, who present that kind of very challenging reality and are prepared to share that in the hope that they can get some help. So, one tries to do what one can in those circumstances. But at the end of the day, there are so many people who need more opportunities and a better society and a better system that it has to be tackled through good government, and government which is focused on giving young people the best possible chance in life. What I believe needs to happen is, first of all, I think the education system needs a substantial transformation. Early childhood and primary education in particular, because when you look at the recent studies that have been done, both by the World Bank and also by a committee that was set up, chaired by Professor Orlando Patterson, a Jamaican, brilliant Jamaican man who's a professor at Harvard University, they show that the outcomes of our primary school system are very, very poor, in that roughly half of the persons leaving, the young children leaving grade 6, going into secondary school, are unable to read or write and can't analyze basic sentences properly. So these are not children who are dunce. These are not children who have necessarily any special needs. These are
All right,
regular
so
children, but
it
they've just
seems Minister Golding's end has frozen. Let's just hope that
You
gets
not hear me?
resolved real quick and he returns. In the meantime, let me just welcome everyone that's tuning in. All right, you're with us?
Yeah, man, I'm with you.
All
Can
right,
you hear me?
Yeah, you froze for a minute. All right,
I'm
continue.
sorry about that. Yes. So I was saying that we need to tackle that problem by making the necessary investments in uplifting and upgrading the standards in our early childhood institutions and our primary schools, especially the weaker ones, so that we level up the standards and have all of our children leaving those schools to go into secondary with the basics in competencies that they need to take on secondary school work. Because what is happening is that their weakness is flowing right through the system, and they end up leaving school with nothing to show for it. Their parents will have made years of sacrifice sending them to school, but at the end of the day, they don't have subjects. Their employment prospects are very weak, and they end up going down the wrong path. And that feeds into the crime and violence problem that the society has, which is very serious. It weakens our economy. It is a disincentive to investment and to the diaspora's full engagement in Jamaican affairs as well. And that is all so these things are all connected, and we need to get to the root causes. Now, in terms of job opportunities for young people. Part of the issue is to have a strong economy, an economy which is generating employment opportunities. We also need to have a bureaucracy which is friendly and supportive of entrepreneurs, micro and small businesses in particular, who want to set up, where they can get the necessary training in basic business and financial understanding so that they can manage their business affairs well for those who want to get into a business. We need to make sure the internet is broadly available. Broadband internet is available generally, just like the PNP did in the 70s with rural electrification, where we brought electricity to communities all over Jamaica who didn't previously had it. The internet is a utility like that, which we need to have pervasive and available and affordable to people, so that creates other opportunities, not just for obtaining knowledge, but also for pursuing business opportunities and employment opportunities as well. We need to ensure that the student financing of tertiary education is not done in a way which turns students off, especially students from less well-off homes, because there are some requirements that are, and the way the loans are structured, it's very daunting for many students and some of them are not prepared to take that risk. We shouldn't have a situation where bright students are afraid of pursuing their dreams because of the way the tertiary financing arrangements are structured. These are some of the things that the system needs to get right. And then there's a whole question of business support. And, some things are happening there, which I'm pleased with. Announcements have been made. Unfortunately, what often happens is announcements don't actually pan out in reality down the road. So we have funds allocated for providing support to small business, but often they can't access it because the bureaucratic requirements are too onerous. And so we need to ensure that we remove those obstacles and give full access to the funding that is being made available, so that those people can perhaps not only help themselves and their families, but employ 1, 2, 3, and more other people. And so these are some of the things that need to happen to make the system and the economy and the society better for all. And this is the kind of Jamaica I see as the Jamaica that we all need to try and build together. And I don't like the tribal politics. I like where we can cooperate and work across the aisle on things which are fundamental and on which there are agreement. And there are things that come, we're not going to agree on everything, but there are things which are basic and which we should commit ourselves to. And that's the kind of politics I like to encourage as well.
I touched on this briefly earlier when I said Jamaicans are fed up and tired with the back and forth as it pertains to JLP and PMP, right? Because so many persons have, hollered about that from time to time. Now, given the opportunity to become the Prime Minister of Jamaica, why should we believe that Mark Golding is going to be any different from what we've seen in the past?
Well, I cannot claim to be perfect by any means, and no human being is. But I do bring to the table a track record of performance, a track record that is, I haven't been engaged in party politics my entire career. That's not what I built my career on. I built my career on excellence in the fields in which I've operated, in the field of corporate law and corporate finance. I was one of the top lawyers in Jamaica and have made a name for myself, built my law firm accordingly. In the area of finance and business, I've also achieved success, both in the first business I mentioned, but also in another business called Proven Investments, which we started in 2010, which is listed on the stock exchange and is also growing and doing well. So I'm not somebody who comes to the table with nothing to show for what I've achieved in the past. And I am somebody who I believe has a reputation of integrity, somebody who stands by principle, and somebody who tries to be consistent in how they approach matters and their view of the world, so that people can feel a certain sense of comfort and assurance that you're not going to surprise them by letting them down when you turn around and do something different to what they were anticipating of you. And I think I've already shown that I'm prepared to take hard decisions that may not necessarily be politically popular, but which I believe are the right decisions for Jamaica. For example, on the whole question of the use of states of emergency as a policing tool, when states of emergency are an extreme measure that the Constitution allows in circumstances where the very democracy and democratic institutions of the country are under threat. That is what it's there to protect, not to be used to lock up and scrape up a whole bag of you them
Mm-hmm.
who end up in detention without access to court for weeks and months on end. No, and we've said that this is a matter which is before the court, which it is, and until that is resolved, we are not going to support it. And many people said, "Well, Mark, you're going to pay a terrible political price for that." And I said, "No, I don't believe I am, because it's the right decision and it is justifiable on principle." And I had to say to the Commissioner of Police in January, who was constantly talking about the need to be able to use states of emergency in this year, in this way, I said to him, "Look, that tool is not in the tool pan right now, but there are other tools you can use. And look, use those other tools and use them well." And I'm seeing some improvements there, which I'm very glad for. Where we've been in the last few weeks, we've seen a lot of recovery of weapons using the existing tools, no state of emergency. And the murder rate has been coming down as well without any state of emergency. So what I'm saying to you is this: I bring to the table a track record of performance, a reputation over 30 or 40 years, nearly 40 years of work, as being somebody who is reliable and somebody who is honest in his dealings with money and, generally speaking, my dealings with other people. And I have a commitment to a fairer Jamaica, uplifting the masses of the people, focusing on their needs and strengthening our human capital, because it is our people and investing in our people who will take us to the next level as Jamaicans and achieve our Jamaican dream. And that's what I'm committed to doing. And if I am given the chance, that is what I'm going to work as hard as I can, as steadfastly as possible to achieve. So I'm not making any specific promises around giving you this or giving you that. That's really not what people want to hear, or certainly that's not what they should be seeking to hear, because
Mm-hmm.
those are not sustainable. The issue really is, how do we move the country forward, and how do we fix our system? How do we use state resources, the laws and regulations, the bureaucracy, and everything else that impacts how people operate and what the opportunities are for self-advancement? How do we tune that properly to give everybody the best possible chance? And the principle must be our guide in doing so, and your orientation must be one which puts the people at the center. And that is what we're about.
You said if given the chance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now let's just say the Jamaican people don't vote for the PMP in the next election, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the present leadership or the present prime minister remains in power. I want you to give me your honest opinion right now,
Mm-hmm.
Minister. Where do you see Jamaica in the next 5 years? Honestly.
I think Jamaica is not achieving some of the key things we need to achieve right now if we're going to move forward. So we have a dysfunctional education system. I'm not seeing a strong policy backed by the necessary resources to tackle that issue. We have a lot of persons who are cynical and lacking a sense of hope because they are unable to move forward in life. The bureaucracy and the system that they have to navigate to move forward is too challenging, and it is too oriented towards persons who have connections or persons who have already got resources, and not enough is being done to make it welcoming for those who need it to work for them. So I am not hopeful that Jamaica can move forward to a better place under Andrew Holness's leadership. We've had it for 6 years. We were supposed to have 5% growth in 4 years' time. That was in 2016, that was committed to. We have had no such growth. Indeed, in the fourth year, we had zero growth. That was in 2019, before the pandemic. I'm not
Mhm.
blaming the economic onslaught of the pandemic on the government. That was a worldwide phenomenon. But by the time the pandemic ensued, the failure of the government to achieve the levels of growth which the country needs, and sustainable and inclusive growth, was quite evident that that was a failure. So, the government is good at public relations and the gimmickry around that. The media gives them, I think, generally speaking, a fairly easy passage for whatever reason. The media is controlled by business interests, and they have their own reasons for whatever positions they take, tacitly or otherwise. But I think the People's National Party is increasingly going to be looked to by the people for delivering the kind of solutions that ordinary Jamaicans, everyday people need to see for them to have a chance in life and for their children and grandchildren to live in a better society. So I believe that the PNP will be successful in the next general elections. And I can tell you that the reception that I receive everywhere I go is very positive and very welcoming. And I expect that to continue as I move around and people get to know me. And so it's ready for us to show the people that we are ready and that we are deserving of them putting their responsibility, their trust and confidence in us, and that we are ready for the responsibility of taking the country forward in government. And I believe we will be given that blessing by the people.
All right. Now, this one right here, Minister Golding, I don't know if it's just me, but I noticed this conversation has kind of became hush hush a little bit. And it's pertaining to the cockpit country, right? Now, I want to ask you directly, sir, is there mining in the cockpit country?
Yes, I would say there is, because it depends what you define the cockpit country to be. The government has come up with a definition, which they have now gazetted in law, as to what the boundaries of the cockpit country are. But if you walk those boundaries, on the outside of those boundaries, what you're seeing in terms of the look and feel of the place, the type of foliage, the type of topography, etc., is the same as what's on the inside. So they have limited the boundaries of the cockpit country in such a way as to ensure that there are areas which would be described as part of the cockpit country previously and by persons who live in those areas and so on, but which are not strictly within the cockpit country. And they are prepared to allow mining in those areas. Now, so I would say yes, there is mining in the cockpit country, not in the cockpit country as defined now and gazetted, perhaps, but in what I think it could fairly be described as a cockpit country. There is, and this is a very serious thing because, as we know, the cockpit country is a unique ecosystem. It is an ecosystem which ensures that the limestone cast on which the cockpit country is built or has emerged, and the trees and the animals and birds and everything else, the entire ecology that's there, is an important water resource for most of the northern and western parts of Jamaica. So if we destroy it or damage it, we are taking huge risks with our future. Because water resources, it is well known in an era of climate change and ecological degradation, are increasingly under threat. So we must be very, very steadfast and resolute in protecting key environmental assets. And we mustn't just pay lip service to it. We must make sure that it is done. So, for example, the NRCA Act, the National Resource Conservation Authority Act, the penalties in that act are way out of date. They are not a disincentive to firm companies that would want to pollute the air or pollute the rivers and so on. They will go ahead and pollute because the fines that they pay are a joke. But we see no move to strengthen that legislation. We have NEPA, which is the central body for giving environmental protection and permits around development. It is housed inside the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. That's a clear conflict of interest because the interests of the environment are always going to be relegated behind the interests of pushing projects to generate quick but not sustainable growth. So these are some of the things which need to be changed if we're going to tackle the issues of ensuring that Jamaica is a place where future generations can enjoy a standard of living and a quality of life which is befitting of a beautiful island that we inherited. And so, I feel very strongly that environmental protection cannot be something that is allowed to take a backseat in an era where climate change is the existential threat affecting the future of the planet.
Now,
So,
you said
mhm.
there are boundaries. Now, let's just say the present government overstep their boundaries and start mining in areas where they shouldn't be. Is the PMP standing up against them where that is concerned, or do you intend to stand up against them where that is concerned, to challenge them and say, listen, that cannot happen and we will not allow that to happen?
We certainly will do what we can to dissuade them from doing any such thing. We have been quite resolute. For example, there's an area called the Dry Harbor Mountains. It is near Discovery Bay. It is a forest on a hill, which is basically unspoiled. It has not been developed in any way from Columbus arrived in Jamaica. And the forest there is very much in the same state and condition that it was 1,000 years ago. It's unique. There are plants and animals in there that are not found anywhere else in the world. The company called Bengal Developments applied to do quarrying there, which would basically remove the forest to get at limestone, their limestone deposits there. That was rejected initially by the environmental agency. They refused a permit. The company appealed and appealed to the minister. Who is the minister? The minister is the prime minister. He is the minister in charge of that ministry, economic growth and job creation.
Mm-hmm.
And the appeal was allowed. And so now we're facing the prospect of that project going ahead. It is unclear what the government's real intent is, because I've heard the prime minister say recently that there will be no mining there, but I don't see how that's so, because the company has been granted the necessary wherewithal to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So we visited the place. We've issued statements. Our spokesperson on environment, Senator Sophia Fraser-Binns, is a very dynamic and outspoken spokesperson who constantly and regularly brings to the attention of the public some of the critical issues affecting Jamaica's environmental resources, including the issue of mining in the Coptic country and the Dry Harbor Mountains, the issue of the effluent that has been spilled into the Rio Cobre River by the Windalco alumina refinery there, and damaging the fishing resources on which the people of Kent Village in the Bagua Gorge rely on for their living. So we are committed, and we do what we can to make the public aware of these issues, and we work with NGOs and other interested parties to try and put pressure on the government to not go down a path which we think is the wrong path. And we will continue to do that.
Mm. Jamaica should be one of the leading countries when it comes to agriculture. You agree?
I agree. I do.
But yet we import a lot. Why is that so?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it said that the food bill is like over $1 billion a year. Now, we are an open market-based economy, so there are things that we can't produce here that we'll import, and that will always happen. But my issue is when we're importing things that we ought to be producing locally, where we have
Exactly.
farmers who are in that line of production, and yet permits are being granted to allow competing products to come in, rather than tackling the production issues and supply chain issues locally that may need some assistance from the state to build a local industry, increase production, reduce the use of foreign exchange to finance imports of those products.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, quite frankly, that agriculture has, for many years, not been given the prominence that it should within government policy. For example, we had recently a Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture, and Fisheries. That's a huge gamut of agencies and that are brought under one ministry without ensuring the necessary focus on agriculture. I think agriculture does need to have a dedicated ministry that's focusing on agriculture itself and maybe related issues like fisheries, which has often been twinned
Mhm.
with it, rural development perhaps as well. And we need a robust policy of helping our small farmers, rather, which is the agency that's supposed to provide support for small farmers, has not been resourced adequately and has not been able to really assist small farmers in the way that it was intended. I speak to small farmers when I go on tours of rural areas, which I do regularly, and they are struggling with things like access to finance. The PC banks, the People's Cooperative Banks, which were established, back in the day, to provide credit to farmers so that they can invest in their farms. And the requirements have been made so difficult. Many of them can't access loans from those institutions. There are no storage facilities, so that where you have excess production at a given point in time, a lot of that ends up being dumped, and the farmers incur losses because there aren't storage facilities that can take them and maybe process those into either keep them cold so that they have a longer shelf life, or process them into purees and other things that can be sold for greater value added. The farm roads to get their products out and to market are in a terrible condition often. And where, I've heard the Prime Minister indicate that the focus of the capital investment that the government will be focused on in the next few years is more roads, to bypass certain towns and what have you. But I'm saying to myself, what about farm roads? What about maintaining the road network? They have so many of our roads in communities and schemes around the country are in a deplorable condition, and people have to live there and traverse those roads with their vehicles if they have them, or transport if they don't have their own vehicle. And it's very, very disheartening for those residents. These are things which I think we should be focusing on, and trying to get right, so that people's lives in their own communities are improved. And in terms of agriculture itself, I think a robust policy with targets to get production up. Jamaica is blessed with some of the best ginger, turmeric, ganja, coffee, cocoa, world-beating quality. And yet we are producing at levels that are way below historical levels of production in all of those areas. We need to look at fixing those things.
Mhm.
And that requires a lot of attention to detail and commitment, working between the government, the bureaucracy, and the farmers themselves to solve whatever the challenges are that can allow us to get our products out there. We should be the breadbasket for the Caribbean. There are many countries in the Caribbean, islands in the Caribbean, that have much higher income per capita than us, have money to spend to buy food and want quality food. And we should be providing that to them, because some of them don't even have water and can't grow nothing. So we should be major exporter of food items to those countries.
And
I
is
think
that is that something that you intend to work on if you make it in office?
absolutely, absolutely. I think that's very much central to our economic policy, is to put agriculture at the level of priority that it is deserving, and ensuring that we really step up our game as a country in that regard. I
Because
believe,
everyone seems to think that it's all about tourism, 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 but agriculture should be right there with tourism as well. But Minister, I know we slated the conversation for an hour. We only have 6 minutes. Do you mind giving me some more time? Because we haven't even gotten to the serious questions yet.
oh, really?
Yeah.
I felt we've had some serious questions.
We haven't even gotten to the serious questions yet. But let's move right along. All
Mm.
right. Now let's talk a little bit about corruption,
Hmm.
right? And we're talking about corruption on all levels, right? On all
Yeah,
levels.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
in um politics, the police force, all levels.
The
What's your take?
private sector, don't forget them.
Yes, all levels. All levels.
Because
What's your
the,
take on that?
there's a lot of the corruption involved, even in where the interface is between persons who want a permit and persons who have the power to grant it. That is
Mhm.
often where corruption seeps in. So often the focus is on the public sector side of it, but it is not limited to the public sector by any means. Hmm.
Mhm. So,
So, what is your question, Unstoppable,
so
on
my question to that is
that? Hmm.
accountability. Will
Hmm.
anyone be investigated? Will anyone be charged? Will you hold people accountable?
I believe it's important that we have structures and systems in place that do hold people accountable. I believe everybody is entitled to due process and fairness in the way in which they are treated, and they cannot be just tried and slaughtered in the media.
Mhm.
But it is important that there is accountability by having robust institutions that are adequately resourced and that are committed and that the laws support that will allow them to do their job of investigating and, if they find something, prosecuting corruption, cases of corruption. I was the architect of the reforms that have led to the establishment of the Integrity Commission, which is a now has prosecutorial powers. We've never had an agency tackling corruption before that can prosecute in its own right cases of corruption. We've also removed the restrictions on the sharing of information between different branches of law enforcement and the Integrity Commission. We were the we established MOCA, the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Task Force. Out of the Lotta Scamming Task Force, we saw the need for a fully vetted unit within the law enforcement architecture of the country that can challenge and take on organized crime and major corruption. And we've the law provides for these agencies having memoranda of understanding and work service agreements where they can support each other. They're all new, they're relatively young institutions. You know, they haven't been around for even 5 years yet. So they've been finding their feet. But I think it's important that the necessary support is given to them. If the laws need any further refinement, that we do that quickly, and so they can do their job, and there can no longer be a sense of impunity where people feel nothing can come out of this and no tapanars can go to jail in Jamaica and so on. We need
Mhm.
to get past that. The law should be the law is a shackle for everybody. You know, the
Mhm.
law is something that everybody has to be held accountable to. We are a nation of laws, and the rule of law is very important. So I believe that is something that the government must stand for. We've seen all manner of corruption under this government in the last 6 years. So many public bodies have been involved in misappropriating public assets. It has been scandal after scandal after scandal, quite disgraceful, really. And unfortunately, nobody has been held accountable yet. But, you know, this is something that bothers me as much as it bothers everybody else. But I think the key thing to do is to ensure that the systems are there and that they're working as they were designed to work. And if they are not, we have to fix whatever and tweak whatever needs to be tweaked so that they can. But as I said, some of these agencies are relatively new and they're finding their feet. And as time goes on, I start to see them becoming more effective already. Some of the reports come out of the Integrity Commission recently indicate that they are doing a lot of work behind the scenes. And when their reports come to Parliament, then they become public documents and the media can emphasize them, and the public can be aware of what's going on. What I want to see now is the next steps, which is the prosecutorial side of it kicking in
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
persons being held accountable. You know,
Yes.
I'm not into witch hunts and trying people, without evidence and so on. That's not what
Mhm.
we're about. We're a free and democratic society, but accountability is critical, and we need these agencies to show that they can handle the work and the
And
responsibilities that have been given to them.
and once you and your party step up and do that and show the Jamaican people that listen, we are actually here to do what is necessary, right? The Jamaican people will then say, yes, this is what we wanted to see all along. Now we can see where Minister Golding is doing something for us, right? And doing the right thing. Now,
Yeah.
let's I personally feel right now as if Jamaica has no crime plan, Minister Golding. And if you should go in office, do you actually have a plan? Because you touched on it earlier, saying that it's all about state of emergency. They keep coming with state of emergencies and zozos and this like that. Do you have something different that you would put in place?
Well, what I've been saying is that I don't believe that our problem of violent crime is just a law enforcement issue. The truth of the matter is that the police have been neglected under this government. The size of the force is significantly below the legal limit. And if you look at the number of police officers per head of the population in Jamaica, despite having a terrible problem with violent crime, our police force is significantly smaller than it needs to be. So we need to get the police force at the level where it is has the necessary resources to do its work in terms of manpower and support systems, and the legislative arrangements to allow the laws that will allow them to do their work effectively must be in place as well. But we have a problem in the country which is deep. It is to do with parenting. It is to do with how we grow children. It is to do with how we handle violence and anger and domestic violence. We need to become a more caring and tolerant society. And we need to ensure that our children are nurtured the right way and given the necessary input so that they can benefit from a strong educational system. The money in the educational system is not being well deployed because it's not getting the results that the country needs. So we have a pipeline of youngsters leaving school who have nothing to show for it. And what opportunities do they have? You know, if they want to make their way in life and they have no subjects, you know, it's very difficult for them to be trained, to get access to training opportunities, to get access to business opportunities. So the life of crime, badness, and gunmanship and scamming is really where it's at. We need to change that. And one of the things that we believe in is a holistic approach, so that we need a national program for dealing with youths who find themselves in that situation. And that needs to be a program that tackles their literacy, their numeracy, remedial education, provides them with skills training, provides them with mentorship, and tries to make productive citizens out of these youngsters rather than treating them as something that police must deal with. But then we have to get to the root causes and say, why so many of our youth leaving school with nothing to show for it? And I've already touched on those issues. It is to do with the early childhood system and the development of the little children and the primary schools that are underperforming. We need to raise standards there. We need to support basic schools. Basic schools are left to fend for themselves in communities, especially low-income communities. The support they get from the state is not adequate. And so they are not really able to deliver the kind of wholesome inputs that the children need. We need to tackle those issues. So my crime plan is a rounded plan. It is a holistic plan. It's a plan that looks at the causes of crime and how we deal with the lives that result and end up going into a life of crime, and how do we reorient that situation so we have less youngsters being tempted to go that route. And we also need to support law enforcement and give them the necessary tools as well, but not by taking away the hard-won and hard-fought-for rights of the Jamaican people. That is not the way forward.
4 police officers were arrested last Friday and accused of being affiliated with a popular gang in Jamaica, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the chairman of the Police Federation spoke out recently, insisting that the government has made its employees susceptible to illegal activity because of the less than livable wage paid by the government. Would you agree to that?
I do think that the police are, especially at the lower levels of the force, the constables and the non-officer ranks, have a justifiable complaint that they are not adequately paid, and the way in which they are treated generally, I think, has left them with low morale. So, for example, there has been a matter to do with overtime, where they had been granted the right to overtime pay. At least that was their understanding of it. But then it hasn't been paid, and the government has been resisting it in court. And so you don't get a sense that the rank and file police officer is adequately respected and is given the necessary package of pay and benefits that will enable them to do their work. I'm not saying that this is a easy thing to solve, because we all know that the government has to be careful how it allocates the resources that it has. But crime and violence is a fundamental part of the problem
Mhm.
facing the country. And you need to have a motivated police force that is prepared to go out there and endanger themselves to protect the ordinary people of the country. And so these issues can't be treated as being secondary. They need to be treated as being priority issues. And I think that there is a definite need for the government to do more to ensure that the police feel that they are respected and not just lip service, but there is that there's a serious regard for them. Now, at the same time, the corruption within the police force has been an issue for many, many years. And the internal disciplinary systems need to be work. They need to be fair, and they need to be non-political, and that's very important because I often get complaints that decisions within the force are being made not on a straight professional basis, but are being made with political undertones and factors being brought to bear. And so we need to really try and take the politics out of the force and have a professional force that decisions around promotion and so on are done on the basis of who's the best candidate, and everybody has a fair chance at that. So these are some things that I would like to see the commissioner focusing on more, because there is a sense out there that the force is a force where the wrong things are happening from quite often around how people get selected. Even right now, there's an issue about these 10 officers that have been put into the senior ranks of the force, having gone through training at the JDF school.
Mhm.
And the question is, how were they chosen, and what consultations were were embarked on when a decision was made to do that? Because you have 10 apparently fairly randomly chosen person. We don't know how they were selected because
Right.
there was no consultation with the police federation and so on around that. This is these kind of things in a low trust environment only make the situation worse. So I'm sympathetic with the cause of the police officers, and I do feel that they are not really being looked after as well. But we are about to go through a process of transformation and restructuring of the public sector employment arrangements. And that's something that Jamaica has been working on for a long time, and it's now reaching the point where we're going to see some adjustments to how people are paid. Now, how that is treated with, we do not know yet, because we haven't. That is being done behind closed doors. But what we have been saying is that the approach to redefining and reclassifying the package of benefits and salaries and so on across the public sector, that must be done on a fair and equitable basis. And I hope it is not going to be a situation where people feel at the end of the day that their group or the lower paid workers have been treated unfairly and so on, because that would be most unfortunate if that were the case. And we have called on the government to ensure that equity and transparency prevails, and consultation with the representatives of the public sector workers, which would include the police, is done in a fulsome way, so that at the end of the day, we have a better public service, a more unified, cohesive public service, higher morale, and one that can attract talent rather than lose talent on a regular basis.
Right. And though it doesn't justify officers of the law involving themselves with illegal activity, the police should be paid properly, to motivate them, like you said, to want to do their job the right way. You're right about that. Now, have you
I'm
actually
gonna
got.
give you 5 more minutes because I have a
Yes,
7:15 commitment. Yeah,
no problem. All
yeah,
right.
man.
Let's get to this one.
Hmm.
Stiffer penalties for crime and gun.
Yeah.
What's
Right
your
now,
take?
there's a new firearms act in Parliament being debated. It is before a joint select committee, which means that they're reviewing it in detail now, and not only parliamentarians but stakeholders from outside Parliament can come in and comment on the legislation and so on. It takes the approach of dividing or treating with illegal weapons as opposed to licensed weapons, and having two regimes, one dealing with the licensed and one dealing with the unlicensed illegal weapons. It has some very serious penalties in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I must admit, I have some concerns. For example, with, illegal possession of a firearm or has a mandatory life sentence attached to it, and where you don't become eligible to even apply for parole until you've served 15 years. Now, I understand the need for harsh penalties, and I do believe that sometimes the penalties around guns have been too lenient. But at the same time, you can create serious problems of injustice if you have a mandatory sentencing regime like that, which can't be adjusted by the court to take into account the individual circumstances that are there. And people can be set up, by and so on. And that's always a risk where somebody may not be very bright or not be very articulate. And they can become a victim of injustice. So I'm hoping that the Joint Select Committee, which I know is looking at these issues very carefully, I'm hoping that they will find the right balance to ensure that there is some protection against serious injustice, but at the same time sending the right strong signal of deterrence, which is needed, because as we know, Jamaica has one of the highest murder rates in the world. I think it had the highest rate in the murder rate in the world last year, and some 80%, I think, is the number of murders in Jamaica are committed with illegal guns. So we can't treat this as business as usual. And I'm supportive of strong legislation, but I don't think that the legislation must be such a blunt instrument that it will become a source of potential injustice in too many cases. So I hope they can find a suitable mechanism for ensuring that doesn't happen. But overall, I think that the time has come that we need to have a much more serious approach to dealing with illegal weapons, so that a man don't just say, first time I get a money as a young man, the first thing I'm gonna do is go buy a gun, because right now that risk seems to be one that they're prepared to take, and we need to change that calculation in their minds. So them say, boy, I don't really want to spend my life in a prison. Better me try to do something different. So I think that thought process needs to be changed so that it becomes something that is seen as seriously risky to them, for them to be going down that route. Right now, it seems to be something that they're more than willing to take on.
All right, I'm going to give you the platform right now, Minister Golding, to address your supporters and potential supporters before we end the live stream. Go right ahead.
Well, just want to thank Unstoppable and Unstoppable TV for having given me this opportunity to have this discussion tonight. The People's National Party is the party that championed the cause of every Jamaican adult having the right to vote. That was the first thing that we took on as a movement in 1938. Then we took on the struggle for independence. And then in the 70s, we took on the struggle for equal rights and justice, eliminating bastardy, equal pay for women, maternity leave, industrial disputes tribunals to give workers rights in the workplace. And we are the party that has given you the National Health Fund and the Drugs for Elderly program, and has done so many more things that have helped to make Jamaica a better place. We built Portmore and many other housing schemes across the country to give persons access to good housing. So we have a track record of achieving for the Jamaican people, and we want to continue to deliver for the people of Jamaica the kind of solutions, policies, and programs that they need to move forward. We need to tackle the serious issues in the country that make this two Jamaicas instead of one. We need to build a country which is based on social justice and the principle of equality, where everybody is somebody and nobody is better than anybody else. And that is the Jamaican dream that I want to pursue, and the policies and programs that will deliver on that dream. So this is where we're at, and this is what we're focused and committed to delivering. And I look forward to developing these ideas and sharing these ideas as time passes and we get nearer to the point where the Jamaican voter will have to make a decision as to the kind of country they want to see going forward. But again, I thank you all for listening, and I hope you found it interesting. I certainly have. And I want to thank Unstoppable for this opportunity to have shared with you this evening. God bless you all.
Thank you, sir, once again for joining me on the platform. And plus I'm sure all the viewers right here tonight that, was listening in on this conversation will be looking forward to see if you become the next Prime Minister of Jamaica, that you actually implement a lot of these things that you mentioned and do make a difference for the Jamaican people and Jamaica on a whole. I do appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you again. One love.
Have a
God
good
bless. Thank you,
blessings.
man. Thank you, Unstoppable.
All right, family. So there you had it right there, the discussion with Leader of the Opposition, Minister Mark Golding. All right. It was a refreshing discussion. Didn't really get to all the questions, but hopefully, we'll have the minister on again at another point where we can, ask a few more questions. However, the questions put forward were all right enough questions, right? But the more serious ones were left to be asked down the line, right? However, it was a good reasoning, good conversation. We got some answers. All right. Family, I want to say thank you all for tuning in on whichever platform you are on. Thank you so much. I do appreciate you being here. Right. If you haven't subscribed to the platform yet, please subscribe right now. Make sure that when you subscribe, you turn on the notification bell. So once we have reasonings like these, you don't miss it. All right. And also on Facebook, if you're following, please make sure that you hit the follow button as well. And give me 1 second, the family. All right. Problem solved. Right. Make sure that you follow on Facebook and also turn on the notifications over there. All right. Blessings and have a good evening.